So how many of you guys are looking for an anamorphic lens on a budget? Let's face it, there's lots of anamorphic lenses out there, but the problem is the cost. If you're looking for a budget solution, however, I would definitely recommend the SIRUI 35mm f1.8 lens. I'm gonna talk to you today about my thoughts on this lens, the pros, there's not many cons, and ultimately why this should be in your kit. So let's roll. So welcome back everybody, my name's Steven of Steven and JANAKA, and I hope you guys all had a fantastic holidays and that your hair probably is growing as long as mine. I think I've gone past the Owen Wilson look, past the Sean Bean Lord of the Rings look, and now I'm kind of venturing on Jay and Silent Bob. Yeah, it's kind of there. So what is anamorphic and what does that name mean? Essentially, anamorphic is derived from the Greek word meaning anamorphon, or to transform. And in this case, you are transforming your footage because when you're taking that footage into your camera, it's going to appear squeezed together. And then in post-production, you de-squeeze it. Now the beauty of a lens like this, which has a 1.33 times crop, is that when you de-squeeze that in post, you really gain a lot of information because you can get a much further width ratio than the traditional 16:9 format of film. And why that is so cool in the anamorphic sense is also, besides the wider field of view and those bars that you often see top and bottom, is that you get what is called like a blue light flare or a blue light streak that is characteristic of these lenses when they're looking directly at a bright light source. And this is regardless if it's daytime or nighttime. Now, to get this effect on a lens, you're often looking at a 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 range in terms of price point for lenses. So when SIRUI made this particular lens first in the 50mm, it really shook up the market because it gave people the option of being able to shoot a native anamorphic style under a price point of $1,000, which for a lens is absolutely remarkable, especially with the build quality that you get in the SIRUI lens. So quick disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by SIRUI to say anything about this lens. I bought this lens with my own money, and I'm not sponsored by any company or any product, although I would love to be sponsored by SIRUI. So if you want to send us a lens, we'd love to review it. So this particular lens is the second iteration of that series. It's the 35mm lens. And after using it for a couple of days, I'm totally hooked. So enough of me talking about the lens, let's see the lens in action. Now I shot this on a Lumix G9, that's a micro 4/3 camera. And essentially micro 4/3 doubles the crop factor on lenses. So 35mm becomes 70mm in the crop factor. And when you do the anamorphic de-squeeze, you can subtract a bit away from that, so roughly about 52mm-ish for the equivalent of the lens, which is not a bad selling feature too for micro 4/3 users when you're shooting cinematic. Roll those shots and you guys will see how impressed I was with the results, both at daytime, nighttime, with a subject, and with a landscape shot. So my takeaways from these shots is that the result is beautiful. Now, with an anamorphic lens, you can expect to have gorgeous oval bokeh, and this definitely delivers on that promise. And those light flares, they're fantastic. If you're shooting at daytime or nighttime, you can still expect to get that beautiful blue flare result. I found it wasn't too soft on the edges, and there wasn't much in the way of chromatic aberration, And in terms of focus breathing, the focus breathing wasn't bad at all for a lens of this type. So to nail sharpness and focus breathing, chromatic aberration, and all the technical stuff that goes along with basically seeing the performance of a lens, once again, it's such a good value and such a great result. And the lens is not too heavy. However, having a heavier lens sometimes is a sign of craftsmanship and quality. And that's why I definitely give huge props to the good folks at SIRUI, because they really nailed it when it comes to build quality. This thing is made of metal. It's not made of plastic, and it doesn't feel cheap. It feels strong, it feels well made, and it feels like a professional lens should when you're thinking about a professional rig setup. This does have a clickless aperture as well as a clickless focal ring. And the focus ring and the aperture ring are what's often characteristic of cinema lenses and anamorphic lenses. This is not an automatic lens, so let me make that clear. It's not an autofocus lens. This is only done by manual mode. The beautiful thing about this is that when you get this lens, not only do you have the ability of being able to use a nice smooth focusing point as well as the aperture adjustment, but if you're using a rig or a rig setup, this comes with focus gears. So all you gotta do is slide them on top of the lens, and you could mount this on a gimbal, you can mount this on a glide cam or on a tripod or a rig setup, and you have that ability of being able to use a dedicated option for that manual adjustment by hand or by a focus pull or by automatic focus pull if you have a motorized one. And what I love about this is the markings on it are definitely clear. You can definitely see the focus markings properly. It's not too loose, as I was saying before. It's got a nice pull to it, and it's got a nice stiff resistance to the aperture pull. And being able to get down to f1.8 on a 35mm lens, that is incredible. On lenses that you can get in a Panasonic series or in a Sony series or in a Canon series or Sigma, when you get down to that lower f-stop aperture, you're looking at least above $1,000. That's giving you professional results and a budget package. So huge shout out to the SIRUI folks for being able to develop a lens that has 13 plus elements within it and keeping it below $1,000. I don't know how they did this, but they've definitely shook up the market when it comes to anamorphic lenses. So as I was saying, this is perfect for filmmakers. Now, this is not a vlogging lens, and the reason why I say this in terms of the everyday use of this lens is that it does have one drawback, and that is the focusing distance when it comes to this lens. So when you're focusing on your subject, you have to take into consideration that you need to be at least 2.8 feet away from that focus point when you're using the lens, as it can only focus down so far. And that's not exactly a huge issue, because when you're thinking about the f aperture down to 1.8, it definitely makes up for where that focusing distance is lost. So this lens comes in a micro 4/3 format to begin with. That's the lens that I got, but you also have the option of being able to pick up different mounting plates on the bottom. Now, I believe you can get a Nikon mount, you can get a Sony mount, and you can also get a Canon EF mount. And it's not really a photo-minded lens, although I'm sure you could shoot fantastic photos with it. I just haven't done a lot of photography on this lens yet, and I would still expect to see the photography having to be de-squeezed out in post-production. So the good folks at SIRUI did a fantastic job of being able to give you a great presentation with the product. You get a lovely box. Of course, you get the focus rings for the aperture as well as the focus pull, and you also get a nice soft bag for the lens too. So you get a fairly decent amount of accessories that come with this lens. You're not having to pay for additional accessories or additional focal rings for this product. It's a well-built and also well thought out product. So beautiful bokeh, you got light flares, you've got a gorgeous build quality, and you get that wide format ratio of filmmaking. And at being able to do this at a 1.33 times crop is just phenomenal for an f1.8 lens under $1,000. So I don't know how SIRUI did it, but hats off to you guys, because you've definitely changed the game when it comes to anamorphic lenses. So please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification below so you can stay up to date on videos we have coming up. And we're looking forward to bringing you tons of content in 2021 as we bid goodbye to the awful year that 2020 was. However, we've learned a ton and definitely look forward to shooting with new techniques and new gear and new ideas to share coming up with you in the new year. So until then, peace.